Hi there. Hello. Good morning. Happy afternoon, happy evening. It's me, Tuomo Vauhkonen here, coming to you live today with RJ Singh, discussing about ultra performance, habits, business, and anything and everything that goes to performance optimization. So I'm really excited to have RJ Singh in our show today, discussing about his life, how he overcome couple obstacles and so forth. So welcome to the show. It's 5 a.m. in Sydney for you. You are awake and breathing. How is things in your world today, RJ?
Yeah, so that was the first obstacle I had to overcome was we've got a little one at home, and she and my 4-year-old boy, they're sick and they've been awake at night, and all four of us were piled in one bed. So there was some obstacles last night, but I am truly awake and I am here with a very weak coffee and I'm ready to roll.
Oh
Thanks for
man,
having me.
weak coffee. I'm not so sure about that. We just gotta crank it up a
Oh,
little bit.
oh, sometimes you just got to use your own energy, man.
I know, fantastic. Yeah, by the way, I feel you for that. Like we have a 15-month-old in the house, and he doesn't sleep every night solidly. So I feel you for that. And I guess that's a good sort of segue to start the conversation about,
Yeah.
because sometimes we have to, and actually, to be very honest, a lot of the times we have to bring ourselves up to the plate, and we have to show up regardless what happens. So since it's 5 a.m. for you right now, so walk us through a little bit of your sort of daily regimen, your daily routines. I know you're very much into habits and routines and so on and so forth. So how do you navigate that sort of family life and still being able to stick with your daily habits and routines?
Yeah, so it's not easy. It requires constant reflection and auditing. And, it was only actually 3 days ago, Tuomo, that I had this realization that we need to be careful with anything like habits, or, when we use words like grit is good, or I have a friend who's actually Finnish. We talk about sisu a lot, and
Wow, really?
yeah, she's a dear friend of mine. We spoke 2 days ago, and all these things are kind of, they're agnostic. They're not necessarily good or bad.
Mhm.
And when you have so many moving parts in your life, you may hear a comment that 5 a.m., waking up at 5 a.m. is good, the 5
Mhm.
a.m. club. Well, it could be good, but it's good depending on what time you're able to get to sleep.
Mhm.
Right. So there was a long time where I would be very hard and fast on my rules. I'd have to wake up at 4 or 5 a.m., irrespective of what time I went to sleep. But what
Mhm.
I've come to realize as I've gotten older and maybe a little bit wiser, is that it's really about the effective integration of all the different areas and how they come together, and then continually assessing whether it's working or not. For instance, yesterday I woke up at 6:30 and I felt refreshed in a way that I haven't felt in a long time. Well, why?
Yeah.
It's because I've got kids, as you know, that wake up 4 times every night. So waking up at 5 a.m. may actually mean that I've only gotten 2 or 3 hours max of deep sleep.
Mhm.
And when I'm training the way I'm training, it's tough. And so to I guess round out your question, you just have to continually audit and look at how your habits and your activities, the relationship between them, to ensure that they're really effective for you. Because what's
Mhm.
right for me may not be right for you.
100%.
Mm.
100%. I love that effectiveness piece, because a lot of us, we don't really do that audit. We don't look at, like, is this actually working? And we're sort of more regiment on our habits and routines. Like, this is where it's supposed to be. That's what RJ is doing. That's what Tomo is doing. That's what XYZ. That's what Robin Sharma is doing. 5 a.m. So I gotta get up at 5 a.m. And you get this tunnel vision. All of a sudden, we sort of the broader perspective. We lose the broader perspective, which is such an important piece. Fantastic. So with that being said, let us know a little bit, who is RJ Singh, and how did you
Yeah.
come to be, and where you started from, and how did you get where you are right now?
Yeah. So as I said, habits really is agnostic, and they could be good or bad. And I would suppose, prior to being someone that was operating with ultra habits, I was operating with massively dysfunctional habits. And I'm
Mhm.
not a guru, and I'm in no way someone that is, proposing that I've had or I've figured it out. It's all been through my own self experimentation of moving from, extreme dysfunction to being highly coordinated as an individual that I've unpacked habits and systems. So,
Mhm.
If you kind of rewind the tape to when I'm 26 years old, I'm a convicted felon multiple times. I'm living in California. I'm making money the wrong way. I'm hanging out in dangerous places with dangerous people, doing dangerous things, and I am operating with habits. But those habits are they're negative.
Mhm.
The things I'm doing, I'm ambitious and I'm driven, but those ambitions and that drive is pointed towards the wrong way. And
Mhm.
so, I'm 26 and my life is culminated in this just absolute chaos and dysfunction. And I'm really looking at long-term prison
Yeah.
in my future or death. One of
Wow.
those two things were on the cards. And, I'm an alcoholic. I'm chronically addicted to alcohol. And, I got involved in some other shit and didn't want to stick around and basically bought a one-way ticket to Australia.
Mm.
And the reason I came to Australia was because I was born here and I had a passport,
Mhm.
but I didn't really know anything about this country. And I came to Australia. I said bye to my dad at the San Francisco gate. I said, I'm going to make you proud. I'm going to turn around my life. And within 2 years, I was in the darkness here.
Mm.
I'd come to Australia. I thought I can get away from myself, and I brought myself with me, lo and
Wow.
behold. And it all culminated in a crisis here. And I had a kind of come to Jesus moment, if you will. I'm not religious, but I mean it
Mhm.
figuratively, where I had this moment of surrender and this kind of out of body experience where I realized I was looking down at myself, realizing just who I had become. And there was this moment of recognition and deep acceptance that I could not live the way I was living anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then what happened after?
I got sober. I decided to get sober. Sobriety for me, I cannot in any way engage in any mood or mind altering substance because I become
Mhm.
spiritually attached, and it
Mhm.
becomes the easier, softer way for me to deal with my human condition.
Mhm.
And I will chase it to the depths of hell and insanity. And ultimately, I know death. And
Mhm.
so, two things happened at that moment. One, I made a decision to get sober. And two, I was luckily enough to find purpose where I had met a man who was my boss. He was an owner in a firm. They're now my biggest competitor.
Mhm.
And I told him my whole story, and I just was broken and tired. And I told him exactly where I was emotionally, mentally, psychologically, and spiritually. And he said to me, he said, well, look, you get your shit together, you get sober. He said, you've got something special. There's
Mhm.
something in you, and I can help bring it out. He didn't say it like that, but that was effectively the flow of the conversation. So there are two things happen. I decided to get sober, but I was also presented purpose,
Mhm.
an alternative to the way I was living. See, the problem was every time I tried to change back home, there was no alternative. There
Mhm.
was no alternative deep purpose. So I reverted back to being a
Mhm.
criminal because being a criminal is what gave me identity. It's what gave me
Yeah.
power.
Yeah.
And there was nothing to replace that identity back home.
Mhm.
And so there was never any sustainability in my desire to change. Whereas business gave me a means of change and purpose.
That's powerful, man. That's a powerful share right there. Gave me chills, man. Thanks for that.
No problem, brother.
Um, any other way, like so let's kind of stay with this because I'm really interested always what makes people tick.
Yeah,
How
for
do
sure.
they how do they find the drive? And you mentioned the word purpose, which is very much in aligned with those two, with the drive and the, you know, the what makes you tick. Like you mentioned business, was there something else that was it just solely the business, and you found a mentor or somebody that was kind of giving you that nod, if you will?
Yeah, so I had finally found something that someone that I highly respected and had their shit together, and someone I probably aspired to be like, told me that you can be like me. You've got the potential and capability. And it had been a long time since I had believed in myself. I had a whole lot of ego, but no real belief in myself, right? That's easy, right? We can all walk around with chips on our shoulders, but you touch it and it just disappears, right? It's like poof, behind it, there's no substance. And that was me, bullshitting and moving and grooving for so many years. I kind of had lost myself. So yes, I think what I realized was that here was an opportunity to build a new self, build a new identity. I was 28 at the time, and I knew that being sober was a requirement. I had been in and out of rehab since the age of 15 to almost.
Wow, that's crazy.
Like the moment I drank alcohol at 13 or 14, I knew I would not be able to stop. My addiction was ferocious. It was, I was an elite athlete, and I struggled I struggled to really realize that athleticism, because alcohol and drugs became the easier way, like I said, and it took everything from me. It took everything from me. And here's this man, and I'm at an emotional rock bottom. I'm at that place one needs to be. But the beauty about being in that place for me, which a lot of people don't have when they're in that place, was I had someone giving me an option of being successful. And business made sense. I mean, I was always driven and I was always good at hustling. But again, it was just in the wrong way. And so I knew intuitively I could be good at it, but I just needed to understand and to build some confidence, you know?
So what I'm hearing is that, like, you've always had the mindset, you've always had the work ethic, you've always been able to put yourself out there, available, quote unquote, do the work, you know, roll up your sleeves, if you will. It was just where are you directing that focus? Where's that energy going, if you will? And you were able to shift that potential, if you will, from the negative to the positive. And the rest is history, I suppose.
Well, this is the beauty. And, you know, I've thought about, and it could be controversial, and I don't know if it would be accepted, of building a firm of ex-convicted felons, but not talking about a labor firm. I'm talking about a professional services firm, because my drive in innately who I am, other than the values and the ethics that I've built over my new life, they're fundamentally the same. I always had a high appetite for risk. I'm good with risk. I understand ambiguity. I understand what makes people tick. I understand how to bring people towards me. Sure, I didn't have the vocabulary and the sophistication required before to maybe talk to a CEO, but I knew how to manage people with power before. They may not have had the name chief executive officer, but they had power. So the capabilities, the innate capabilities were there. I just didn't have the language and the competence and the professionalism and the polish to operate in the world that you are operating in today.
So what I'm hearing, it was literally just, okay, let's put it this way. This is an interesting one. So what was it, something else that made you realize those capabilities? Was it something that made you realize that potential other than the mentor or the person? Was there sort of other practices or something else that is like gave you that light bulb moment? The mentor you mentioned, was there something else?
I knew innately the capability was there. You know, like I had done a business degree back in the US, and I bullshitted my way into the school, and I used it as an excuse to say, hey, people say, what are you doing with your life? And I'm like, well, I'm a student. But it was chaos. You know, I'm in downtown San Francisco in the financial district, going to school, and then after school going into the Tenderloin, some of the worst parts of San Francisco, doing what I'm doing. And I knew that from the way I was able to hustle and my resourcefulness and my ability to create nothing from something or something from nothing, I knew it was there. I knew it was there. And so when I met this dude and I tell him everything, and I'm basically at my wit's end, I had actually resigned the night before. It was Sunday or 5 a.m. and I was drunk and I resigned. And he called me the next day and said, look, let me tell you, I'll give you some advice. Don't make major career decisions when you're drunk and it's 5 a.m. That morning after I woke up, that's when I had my I can't do this anymore moment. And I said to him, I said, well, look, I actually need to talk to you. And I'd like to tell you a little bit more about myself in terms of where I'm at. And we met. And again, that conversation ended up being rounded out into a very positive and future orientated conversation. And I just knew that this man had the tools and the skills and the capability to help me become better. And I knew I was willing to do anything to move away from who I was. See, what made me extremely potent in those early days was that I was working not for a paycheck or for commission. I was working to build a new identity.
I love it.
You know, like I was, and there was a lot of fear there. So like, I wasn't pretty. If you were around me, I was like, I had this perceived pressure on myself, and I was like a bit ruthless, and I was a bit, I had to succeed, because if I didn't succeed in the business world, I would then go back to who I was. So you can imagine the level of fear and scarcity I was operating from. But nevertheless, it was a very potent energy in terms of achieving outcomes.
Oh man, that speaks loud and clear. It's such a testament to this whole idea when we're building. Let's start round this up a little bit. Thank you for, first of all, that share. That's a powerful share. Like, instead of building habits or looking for those outcomes or looking for like XYZ, something glory, a podium, you were building identity. Like, there is a powerful takeaway right there, because you're going from external to internal. And obviously we all know that the internal mission, internal power is a lot more than the external one. Like, those external things are great. I think the outcomes are important, but what you just shared there, as you were building a new identity, I think you were just, the drive is completely different to sort of external outcomes and external goals or visions or missions, if you will. So, wow, that's a powerful one. Want to shift gears just a tiny bit. How did you then, well, it's kind of, at least for me, it's a little bit obvious, but the people listening to this, and by the way, if you're listening to this with us live right now, I see there's a few people. Just leave us some comments, leave us some insights. If something resonates with RJ's shares, just leave us little comments or questions if you have. We'll tackle those on towards the end of the chat. But how did the ultra habits came into place? And I know you're an ultra runner and you go for distance. So how did that come to be?
Yeah, so after I got sober, I recognized the power of what I call crucibles, right? Like, it was a crucible. It was a challenge. It was a transformative challenge, getting sober. And so I started to purposely implement crucibles, shit that would extremely pull me away from my current state into a better state. So I use external pressure to create internal change. Right. So I did an MBA, an executive MBA, top school in Australia. And I'm like a dumbass academically. So it was hard, right? Like, you're talking about 22 hours a week study on top of work. I'm in the office all weekend, all morning, night. It was just crazy. 4 years. I get done with that. My wife is like, you have to do nothing for 6 months. I'm like, fair enough, right? Like we got a newborn, and she's like, no, you just can't do shit for 6 months. I'm like, okay. And I start running again because now I've got time, right? So during my study, I didn't have time, so I was doing functional 20-minute exercises or whatever, right? Just trying to sweat. I had run early days in sobriety. Running was a big part of me helping to sustain my sobriety. You know, it's good for that.
Sure.
And so I started running again. And basically, I always loved hiking, but I always felt like it was too slow. And I didn't know that there was this kind of thing of ultra running. So I started running, and some friend tells me about a race close to where I live, which is like a 50-kilometer race on one of the trails around here. And I'm like, yeah, I'm totally doing that. So I signed up like a month and a half before the race. They were actually concerned because I never run longer than 20 kilometers. They wanted to kind of see that I could do it because it's a tough race. And you know, I didn't have trail shoes. I didn't have a pack. I didn't have any of it. And I just did it. And it was chaos. Like, you know, first 20 kilometers in, I'm running. It's like it's a road race. I've got no idea that the elevation. I've got no idea of what's to come, the nutrition required. And I'm at the top of a mountain in a full body spasm on the ground, 20 kilometers in, thinking how I'm going to get the rest of the 30 kilometers out. And anyways, I got it done. And that was the beginning of a focus in ultra running, which ultimately led to some sponsorship and to some support from brands. And, you know, that journey's evolved as well with kids and, you know, building the Ultra Habits brand and having to focus on my business, Cora. And so, you know, I'm still running. I'm doing shorter distances because what I'm finding is when I do longer distances, given the other responsibilities I have, I can start to get resentful and I can start to not enjoy it, right? So that was kind of the commencement of how I got into ultra running. Really, it was another crucible. It was another transformative process that I knew if I undertook would shift who I was. And for me, it was interesting because it was along the physical, where I'd already done the mental through the MBA and the spiritual through getting sober. I thought, well, this is really kind of intuitively what I know to be next.
Fantastic. So help me understand a little bit of those ultra habits you mentioned. Obviously, they go with the ultra running from your past a little bit. What are the other quote unquote principles, if you will, or sort of your cornerstone habits that you have when it comes to under that brand of ultra habits?
Yeah. So basically what I do at Ultra Habits is I experiment with various habits that I find in the world that are proposed by experts, by researchers, by scientists, by other elite performers, whether it be military or athletics. And I experiment with those myself to really understand how it will impact my performance. And then I bring those habits to the executive world in a succinct way, in a way that executives who are time poor, who do not want to read the million books, who aren't interested with theory, they want to understand the benefits of the application. I then bring that. So only this week, I've been experimenting with nose breathing, particularly whilst performing, whilst running. So, you know, I ran 12 kilometers on a trail on Monday, simply breathing through my nose, right? To really understand, will it keep me aerobic longer? Will it enable me to stay and, you know, move away from the potential becoming anaerobic? Like I'm a mouth breather. I really want to understand, you know, sleeping at night, breathing through my nostrils, breathing through the day. How are these habits really going to impact performance for real? And then I bring those learnings and understandings to the wider executive community.
It's funny you mentioned that. That's pretty much what I've been experimenting as well. I'm kind of training for a little bit of for me a little bit of a longer, like a 39K run up in the mountains. And I heard about this nose breathing, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So apparently, kind of, at least to me, I realized it slows your heartbeat down, it slows your breathing down a little bit, and it, you know, keeps you more centered, if you will, and maybe not outpace yourself. I'm not sure if that's exactly what the outcome is, but it's interesting. It kind of really takes practice to get into it. But I've heard people running marathons and ultras just through nose breathing. So
Yeah.
fascinating. So let's get into more into the others, the internal elements as well, which is, this is my personal question that I ask from myself a lot of the times, is what brings you fulfillment? Like we talked about those, the things that you overcome, the challenges from your past, and now like building ultra, building your business, and so on and so forth. In the end of the day, when you put your head on the pillow, what brings you fulfillment? Instead of joy and happiness, if you will, like that deeper fulfillment.
Impact. Creating impact. And that may be in different spaces, right? For me, it's creating impact in the work I'm doing in that day, whether that's through my business Cora, or through Ultra Habits, or with my kids, with my environment. It's what kind of impact have I created today? Then I also look at as well, how well have I integrated the various components of my life and moved in the day with some level of grace? Because it's very easy for me to run through life like a bull in the china shop, dude. I do it all the time, and I'm knocking things left, right, and center because I'm so outcome orientated, or I'm task orientated. And so I need to continue to reflect with all these moving parts. Like, am I actually doing it gracefully? And how well am I integrated? How well am I impacting others through the way I'm operating? Or am I impacting others negatively? Right? So I think those two things, purposeful work, impactful work, but at the same time, how well has it all come together to ensure that it's not just all about me and my work, that I'm actually doing it in a somewhat graceful manner.
Love it. So here's another kind of follow up from that, because I'm very driven, same as you, maybe different perspectives, and we all have our drivers, but those are a lot of the outcomes, a lot of the goals, a lot of the like, I want to do XYZ to achieve something. Now you mentioned the word walking your day gracefully, and that what comes to me from that is presence, to being able to stay present at the activity at hand and stay focused. How do you toggle between that, like looking at those outcomes, yet being able to stay present on each day, if it's being with your kids or with your clients or with yourself? You hear me? Like, what's your ideas on that? And if how do you do it for yourself? And then any other ideas or tips? How can you sort of navigate that reality?
Where I become challenged in that is when I do too many activities in one day that are moving in different directions, that require different pace. For instance, today is going to be an interesting day. We do this interview at 5. I've got to do some admin, and then I've got to run a 14K run in the bush, right? That might take me about an hour and a little bit. Now I've got to go home and meet the movers who are moving some stuff in and out of my house whilst I'm on a work call. And then I've got to get in the car and drive to some meetings, right? So these kind of activities that are kind of at different paces, different environments, different types of communication require me to interact in different modes. What I typically will do is just charge through it all and become disheveled if I'm not operating from a place of centeredness. You see? And so what I find is I've got to declutter my day as much as possible. And the way that I do that is by focusing on the priorities and the essentials. Like, life has to really become a prioritized, intentional system if you're performance orientated. And if you really want to be present and bring yourself to each activity. It's too difficult when you're doing a million things There's a reason why human beings run on autopilot. It's efficient, but it's also distracting when you're continually split, when the doer and when you as a doer and your mind are split, you're not operating optimally. Right? So I think it's about decluttering the day, streamlining your activities as much as possible, if possible, aligning the activities so you're efficient. So you're not, for me, it's not moving around from various activities that require me to physically be all over the place, because it becomes inefficient. So planning my week, my days better, and prioritizing and focusing on the essentials, I think it's really important. What's really important? We got to ask ourselves that.
Yeah. I love that. And like we hear those things a lot, and especially like looking at your top 3 priorities in the morning before you start your day, and then the 10 a.m. comes along and we forgot that, right? Completely out of the window, and all of a sudden we're just in reactive mode, and we're just reacting to what the world shows us up in a way. And for me, what and just piggybacking what you just mentioned there, for me there's a lot of these transition moments. The transition rituals and habits are key as well. Like when you go from one activity to another, you have these little transition moments, being a couple of minutes. Sometimes you jump into a car and you go from one place to another. So those transition habits, if you will, or moments are kind of invitation for you to release the baggage from the previous activity and maybe set an intention for the new one, instead of carrying the baggage from the previous activity to the new one, and all of a sudden it's just all kind of clutters together, instead of having that, what you just mentioned, kind of schedule, putting in the, like, yeah, that's the right word. Sorry, I lost it. It's a hard word for me, but yeah, so that's fantastic. I love that.
Just on that too, Momo, I think a big one for people that are like they move through their day with force. It's like when I go home at night, when I'm driving home, I slow down my breathing, as soon as I put that key in the door. And I'm not always graceful. I'll sometimes barge in the house, start cleaning stuff, moving like a whirlwind, because I've got to get, like, the bed wasn't made in the morning. I start making the bed at 5 in the afternoon because I've got systems and OCDs sometimes that need to be fulfilled. But in the main, when I get home, I need to check exactly what you said. What am I bringing home to the family?
Yeah, that's powerful, man. That's powerful. Like for me, it's the same thing. Like we have a little hill before, like 5 minutes before home, and every time I sort of climb up the hill with the car, and on the way down, there's this beautiful view opens up, and it's like all of a sudden my breathing just slows down automatically, and I'm able to leave whatever happened in town. I'm able to leave that to town, and just like, okay, now I'm in the family mode. Now I'm the partner. I'm a father right now, and it's just kind of like, bringing a different identity, even though you want to be the same person all the time. But there's these like little pockets, like at least that's my perspective. Like, I wouldn't say masks, but different parts of you for different parts of day, if you will. That's hard. That's hard, but I think it's necessary, instead of dragging yourself as a person that when you're at work and bringing that the same persona to your family and to your kids. So powerful. I love that identity piece that you mentioned there in the beginning. So somebody interested right now, we're starting to wrap this up slowly here, RJ. And first of all, thanks so much for being with me already. For someone that's interested of this type of lifestyle, being able to, somebody who wants to perform better, maybe kind of struggling with various elements of their life, being like addictions or what have you, or just maybe someone who's not able to perform better or wants to perform in a higher quality, higher level, what would be your sort of starting points, how to bring someone up to speed, if you will, and be able to sort of perform better? Where would you start?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it really depends on the level of dysfunction or transformation required, right? If you're talking about somebody that is looking to gain some wins and lose some weight and they're capable to have a pair of running shoes and put it on right now. I would say to live your life guided by less planning and what's the next right thing that I can do. So if you're listening to this conversation and you want to lose some weight and you're at home, what's the next right thing you can do to lose that weight? Don't worry about planning. I don't want to hear about your 6-month goal. Put some shoes on, go for a run, go for a walk. Look at what you're eating. What are you about to put in your mouth? Right? It's the next right thing. When we look at, that's what I love about habits. It's a momentary process that we look at second by second. What's the next right activity? What's the next right thing I can do? It doesn't require monumental shifts. It just requires us to do the next right thing. And for me, that's easy. I don't have to focus on the bigger picture. And what happens is we start to do these little things. We start to feel better. We start to experience the win. Those around us start to give us that feedback. Hey, Joe, you're looking great, man. Like, wow, okay. And we start to form a new sense of identity. And once we form that sense of identity, once that identity starts to shift, the habits reinforce it. And it becomes a loop, this kind of feedback loop where your habits will reinforce your identity. What you do will always serve who you think you are. People say, oh, how do you run 16K when you're tired? There's no choice. And sometimes I've got to be careful of that because I'm on the other side of the coin now where I can go, I should rest. I should take that day off. So it's about doing the next right thing. For those that require transformational shifts because of dysfunction, you require a rock bottom. You require a moment where you realize that this isn't working. You can expose yourself to information and lots of inspirational people that have maybe done and walked the path that you really need and want to walk. But unfortunately, those inspirational people, those inspirational quotes and books that you're reading cannot give you the gift of desperation. That is something that you have to find. It's a gift, in my view. And once you do have that gift, once you make that decision that you cannot live the way you're living, then it's about finding the people around you, finding the people in the world that have walked that path that can help guide you out of that darkness and towards the light. And in whatever dysfunction looks like for you. And for me, mine was addiction.
Powerful, man. Powerful share. Wow, there's a lot that you packed there. Let's bring that to the present right now. And you mentioned about Ultra Habits. You mentioned about Cora Group. What is your contribution to the world? What does it look like right now? And how do you help people? And also where can people find you?
Yeah, so I think my contribution, that's a big question. I would say in my little way, my contribution to the world is the experimentation and implementation of habits, the stuff that people do not necessarily want to do or are doing themselves. And I'm not talking about it. Like there's books out there where people are talking about it. They've researched it. I'm actually living it. And then I'm bringing it to you. I'm bringing it to the executive landscape. And I think that in my little way, that's my contribution. And in many ways, it impacts myself, obviously, positively. So I'm trying to change the world through the implementation of what is sometimes to be perceived as unsexy, and that's habits. But I know that it's the habits that are transformational. It's not our thoughts, it's not our concepts, it's not our beliefs or ideas. It's the shit that we're doing. Right. And that's my contribution. And people can find me at Ultra Habits at www.ultrahabits.co. And I'm on LinkedIn primarily at RJ Singh.
Beautiful. What I'm gonna do right now, I'm just gonna drop that link. Let's see if this link goes through. I'm just gonna put your website right there at the ultrahabits.co. Powerful conversation. I love. I'm a big fan of habits myself as well, but finding people that are really truly walking their talk and being able to vote, to cast that vote, that's James Clear a lot of the time says, that casting that vote of who you want to become and changing that identity through your habits, through that internal work, through suffering, through going, like getting over those obstacles and humps and lumps and bumps that we all encounter. What a powerful conversation. Thank you so much, RJ, for your time this morning. I know it's been an early one for you, but like you mentioned, you're up early and you are ready to tackle the day. So I would highly recommend to follow RJ, especially on LinkedIn, and also check out his website. And you also have a podcast as well, which is a powerful one. I actually listened to one of your recent about, I think it was, I listened to about the fasting. I think you
Ben
interviewed
Anxiety.
someone yeah, that was an interesting one. So check Ultra Habits. I think it's Ultra Habits as a podcast.
It's podcast it's on all platforms, including YouTube if you want to watch video.
Fantastic. All right, man. Thanks so much for this time. It's been a pleasure. I definitely got, couple key ideas and key insights and notes and yeah, so it was a beautiful conversation. And
thanks for having me, brother.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You too.